that's what fascinates me about painting in and of itself, especially when I was younger, was the fact that it can be an illusion, was the fact that it can be something that's like, you know, takes you outside of your space, but you still have to, you still have to pay attention. You still have to like grasp that space in order to understand it, which means that, you know, whether or not you're meant to understand it, you create the image in and of itself, and so you create that illusion, and it's like a uh, self-inflicted perspective. I started getting into this idea of landscape mainly because of uh, Chicago, mainly because of the city itself. It was very stark um, and impressive and overpowering, but at the same time, I was riding, you know, public transportation, and so it kind of gives you this idea of dominance when you're riding over the city constantly, and the city started to take on its own, started to take on my personality. I started to like place myself into places that I had never been before, but I saw, you know, and so that worked more into my abstractions and became more and more uh, a staple of my artwork, the idea of the landscape as being personal. Then, you know, that developed more and more. I still work with abstraction, and I still like the freedom of playing around with absolutely nothing other than a composition and some colors and ideas, you know, but nothing that's like based on anything directly. And so every once in a while I do smaller works where I sort of experiment. But for the most part, my larger paintings tend to be these landscapes and tend to be, you know, draw from these spaces. I guess that also has to do with the fact that, you know, as I work larger, I want to bring myself into the painting more, you know, and I want to like be absorbed by the space more. And so that's, I think, also why I've like sort of stuck with landscape, is because I feel like, you know, it has that ability more than abstraction. Abstraction can bring you into a work, but it brings you into a work from a very singular place, for me anyway, in how I perceive things. And landscape, you know, there's so many icons, there's so many things that you spot where you're like, I know what that is and I know what that is, and so therefore I kind of feel aware of this space, and I feel a memory with this space. Sometimes it's a quick process, sometimes it's a slow process, but when I'm painting a landscape and working on it over a long period of time, uh, I sort of, you know, I sort of revisit that area for a while, the memory of the space, but then the painting itself kind of becomes its own space. And then I start working more into the painting, and I start paying more attention to what's happening within the painting, and that has more to do with my, you know, my self-imposed rules of abstraction and, you know, how I want things to be viewed more than how I want uh, my memory to be displayed. I want the painting to remain active. I don't want um, vapid spaces. Though I create sort of, you know, an expanse generally in the context of the landscape. I want that form to become an object, I guess. That negative space to become something substantial. Um, I got a lot of that from artists like, you know, Mondrian and Hans Hofmann, and then I started playing with, you know, ideas of depth and weight, and that came from Burgoyne Diller. Sometimes I don't know when I'm done. Sometimes I'll work on a painting and I'll think it's done, and then 3 or 4 months later I'll say, oh my God, I can't believe that I didn't do this, and I'll do something else. I spend a lot of time in front of my canvas not painting, but painting in my mind, essentially, you know, and just sort of like exploring ideas and playing with color, but only sort of visually. And sometimes I'll say, oh my God, this is gonna look great, and I'll lay something down after I've thought about it for like a week, and I lay it down and it looks like crap. And you know, so then I have to go back and I like play around with things a little bit more, or try and fix these things. And those are less interesting because that's more problem solving than that is like actually developing the painting. For the longest time I was so frustrated because, you know, I'm going back and forth between these like pure abstractions and then these landscapes. I'm like, these can't go together. Like I can't send this out to someone saying, I'm an artist who has this, to say, because everything is so scatterbrained. Whereas, like, and I wouldn't say scatterbrained, I guess, but it is scattered. It's not like the ideas 100% connect. And other people see those associations, and that's what's kind of fun for me is, seeing how other people react to the work. I definitely wouldn't place a lot of these works together. The diptych itself, started out with one painting, and I was just really interested in expanding that idea. I didn't paint them together. They were sort of joined at the hip after the fact. I was conscious of the other painting, but again, it's sort of like my landscapes. I was conscious of it as a memory. I was conscious of it as, something that I had seen and experienced, but not something that I'm directly drawing from. And in that sense, I think it's, a little bit more interesting. I paint around the sides of my canvas because I feel like it's something that is an object. It's something that has been created and therefore needs to stand out in that sense. And that also has to do with the fact that I don't want things to be fully two-dimensional or fully three-dimensional. I want that, fluctuation. And so that's why I kind of see it as, an object in motion, something that's like not physically dependent on one dimension or the other.